In the bustling city of Arcadia, where glass towers pierced the clouds and rivers of neon flowed through the streets long after midnight, Aethon Parker lived a life carefully divided between the extraordinary and the beautifully ordinary. To the world, he was a quiet, dependable engineer who fixed structural problems no one else could solve, a man who preferred blueprints to conversations and evening walks to crowded gatherings. To Lily and Max, he was simply Dad. The maker of pancake constellations on Sunday mornings, the champion of bedtime stories, the steady presence who knew how to chase away nightmares and turn power outages into adventures with flashlights and shadow puppets. And to the shadows that moved between Arcadia's skyscrapers, he was something else entirely. Aethon had never intended to become a guardian. The first time his strength had revealed itself, he had been standing in the kitchen of the small apartment he and his wife Mira once shared, holding his newborn daughter while the world outside seemed suddenly fragile. He remembered the way the chair had splintered beneath his hand when he tried to pull it closer, the way the sound had echoed through the room like a warning. He remembered Myra's wide eyes, not filled with fear, but with something deeper, understanding. "Whatever this is," she had told him softly, placing Lily in his arms again, "it doesn't change who you are." Mira had always believed in him. Even now, years after illness had taken her from them, her voice lived in the quiet corners of his mind, guiding him when doubt threatened to pull him apart. After she was gone, the city had seemed larger, colder. The nights had stretched endlessly, and the responsibility of raising 2 children alone had settled on his shoulders with a weight greater than any car he could lift. It was during those sleepless months that he began to test the limits of his abilities in secret. Running along empty highways faster than the headlights could follow, leaping across rooftops where no one could see him, listening to the distant hum of the city until he could separate every sound into its own thread. He learned quickly that power was not the same as purpose. Purpose came from Lily's laughter when he helped her with her science projects, from Max's small hand slipping into his when they crossed the street, from the way their apartment felt warmer when they were all together, even if the world outside trembled with danger. Arcadia had always needed heroes. But Aethon had never wanted to be one. That choice was taken from him the first time Dr. Spectre appeared. Once, the man had been known as Elias Varn, a brilliant climatologist whose research had promised to save coastal cities from rising seas and farmers from endless drought. But brilliance had turned to obsession, and obsession to ruin. When his final experiment collapsed into catastrophe, taking his reputation and his sanity with it, he had disappeared into the underbelly of Arcadia. When he returned, the sky itself seemed to recoil from him. Super Dad. A name the media had invented after grainy footage captured a blur of motion stopping a collapsing bridge, had become Spectre's favorite adversary. Aethon hated the name. Yet he answered to it every night. Their battles had become a strange kind of conversation. Spectre spoke in taunts and calculated strikes, Aethon answered with restraint, always careful, always aware of the fragile city beneath them. This time, the stakes felt different. The machine pulsed with a power that bent the wind itself, hurling debris in every direction. Spectre moved with the precision of a chess master, anticipating Aethon's every attempt to reach the device. Energy blasts forced him back again and again, each impact rattling through his bones. For a moment, just a moment, doubt slipped in. He saw Lily at the kitchen table, frowning over her homework. Max building towers from mismatched blocks. The empty chair where Mira used to sit. If he failed here, the storm would reach them. Something inside him shifted. He stopped fighting like a hero and began fighting like a father. Instead of meeting Spectre's attacks head-on, he redirected them, guiding the blasts away from the tower's structural supports. He used his speed not to strike, but to dismantle, tearing away the machine's conduits, ripping free the anchors that held it in place. Spectre's strategies faltered as the battle moved beyond calculation into something driven by instinct and love. When Aethon finally reached the core, the device screamed like a living thing. He tore it free with a force that sent shockwaves through the storm. The vortex unraveled, clouds collapsing into harmless rain. For a long time, he hovered there in the quiet that followed, the city spread beneath him like a constellation. By the time he returned home, exhaustion had settled into every muscle. The apartment was dark except for the soft glow of a nightlight. Lily and Max were still awake, sitting together on the bed as if they had refused to let sleep come until he was safe. "You missed the end of the story," Max said. Aethon sat between them, pulling them close. "Then you'll have to tell it to me." As they spoke over each other, filling in the details he had missed, he realized that this small, warm room, was the center of his universe. Not the skies above Arcadia. Not the endless battles. In the weeks that followed, the city celebrated the mysterious hero who had saved them once again. News reports speculated about his identity. Children wore homemade capes. Somewhere in the shadows, Dr. Spectre rebuilt his plans. And every morning, Aethon packed lunches, tied shoelaces, and walked his children to school. But secrets have a way of seeking light. It happened on an ordinary afternoon when a school bus skidded on a rain-slick street, its brakes failing as it lurched toward an intersection crowded with pedestrians. Aethon was across the street, carrying groceries, when he heard the metal scream. There was no time to think. He moved. To everyone else, it was a blur. A man appearing in front of the bus, stopping it with his bare hands as the asphalt cracked beneath his feet. Groceries scattered. People shouted. Cameras turned. Lily stood on the sidewalk, staring at him. Their eyes met. In that instant, every carefully constructed wall between his two lives crumbled. That evening, she sat at the kitchen table, silent while Max chattered about the excitement. When he finally went to bed, she remained, her gaze steady. "You're him," she said. Aethon lowered himself into the chair across from her, feeling more vulnerable than he ever had in battle. "Yes." She didn't speak for a long time. Then she reached across the table and took his hand. "You're still my dad," she said. Relief hit him harder than any blow. Max found out a week later when Lily decided secrets were too heavy for one person to carry. His reaction was simpler, pure wonder. "Can you fly me to school?" he asked. "Only on special days," Aethon laughed. From then on, everything changed. He no longer fought alone in the silence of the night. He came home to questions about physics and ethics, to drawings of Super Dad taped to the refrigerator, to Lily reminding him to reinforce the suit's shoulder joints because she had noticed stress fractures in the footage from the news. The balance he had once struggled to maintain began to feel less like a burden and more like a shared mission. Arcadia still needed its guardian. Dr. Spectre still lurked beyond the reach of the law. Storms, both literal and human, continued to rise. But when Aethon soared above the city now, he carried with him the knowledge that his greatest strength was not the power in his muscles or the speed of his flight. It was the trust waiting for him at home. On clear nights, he sometimes took Lily and Max to the rooftop, where they would sit wrapped in blankets and watch the skyline shimmer. They would point at the stars and argue about which ones were planets, about whether other worlds had heroes of their own, about whether Mira could see them from wherever she was. Aethon would listen, his arms around them, the wind gentle for once. The city below would glow with endless possibility. And for the first time since his powers had awakened, he understood that he was not divided between two lives. He was whole. He was a father who could stop storms. He was a man who had learned that the strongest force in any universe was not gravity or lightning or the turning of the earth. It was love, quiet, patient, and unbreakable, waiting at the end of every flight, in the light of a child's room, in the simple word that mattered more than any title the world could give him. Dad. And as long as that word existed, Aethon Parker would rise whenever the sky darkened, not because he had to, but because he chose to, again and again. For the family that made every battle worth fighting and every dawn a promise that no matter how fierce the storm, he would always find his way home.